So I went to Sofia in 2016. Absolutely fell in love with the city and the country. If you guys have never been, when traveling is a thing, just start planning your trip there. It's a amazingly old city. There's so many ruins, so much history there. The countryside is beautiful. One of my most favorite hikes ever is the Rila Mountains, where you go up and you see the 7 lakes of the Rila Mountains. And as you're hiking up, the lakes are becoming more and more frozen as you get to the top.
May I just add a small thing, a latest discovery? The oldest Homo sapiens tooth was found here in Bulgaria very recently.
So
oldest, I mean, like Homo sapiens has never been discovered such old. They didn't give any timing, but it's like a new claim. Sorry, the ancient. It's an ancient land. I don't know how old it was, but yeah, it was a 45-year-old man who left the tooth.
So yeah, that's so. They're not only civilization has been there for a really long time, but even pre-civilization, humans have been there for a really long time. Anyway, I think I stayed the first trip. I stayed like 9 days. I gave myself plenty of time to go see the countryside and really just fell in love with it. And then the conference organizers actually decided to invite me back for a 2-day masterclass. So I got to come back 2 years later, really kind of solidify those relationships. We had a wonderful time. And then Jimmy and Ekaterina and Mariana joined cohort 1. So Jimmy and Ekaterina went through cohort 1. They're using OOUX in their work now. And that's what we're gonna hear about. So both of them are usability UX professionals at SAP and have been there for quite a while. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit more, but I will go ahead and hand it over to you guys to let us know about quantum content.
Thanks, Sophia, for the great introduction. So today we're going to talk about quantum content. This is us. You can find us on Twitter. These are our Twitter account handles, and you can find us as well on LinkedIn and Facebook, by the way. And let me see if I can change the slides.
I gave a control.
Yes. Okay, hope I changed that slide. So this is the agenda. Of course, we're going to talk about object-orientedness. We'll give you lots of examples, discuss and talk to you about different concepts and principles, and we'll give you some things to take home. And I know that you can't see anything quantum in the agenda, but don't worry, it's there.
And guys, if you have questions or anything, just stop us, ask. Let's make it into a conversation.
Yes, I think we can do that. So this is us, our pretty drawings. I'm Ekaterina and this is Jimmy. I'm a user assistance developer, which means I'm a technical writer. We both work at SAP and Jimmy is a usability professional. I believe that you can always find a way to improve your content, and Jimmy believes that IT can be actually usable. And I'd like to make a little disclaimer. We both believe that there is no boundary between design and content, and they're both under the UX umbrella. And design is as important to technical writers as is writing to designers. So it's time for a little poll. Think of a word, and Sophie, if you can play the poll, it would be great.
Sophia, we can't hear you.
Yeah, so just everybody, I just want to give everybody a moment so they can think of their word, write it down if you want to. Just think of any word that jumps into your head, and then we're going to launch a poll and you're going to let us know a little bit about that word. I'll just give them a moment to think of the word. You got it? Okay.
So having your word, what kind of word did you think of? Okay.
So we have
4 people so far, 5 people replied. What's your word? So the attendees are 7.
Yeah.
Are we counted as attendees?
You know, I don't know. We've never done a poll before. I don't think that I don't think I can vote. So anyway, we need 2 more votes. Yeah, we need 2 more votes, guys. If you haven't voted.
No, we
Okay.
don't. It's the other
Oh,
2
I
are
see.
Katya and me, so it's 7.
No, we have 7 participants. We have 1 more vote now. 1 more person needs to vote. What's the word that you thought of?
That's probably me. I just can't find where it is, and I have this computer in German, and I have no.
Oh, hi, Gabriella. Okay.
Can't find the poll. Sorry.
And Gabriella's she's played this game before. Okay, so I think I can hit in poll. I'm going to take a screenshot because I'm nervous about losing our results, but they will be hopefully very enlightening. I'm going to end the poll, and can you guys see it? Share results. So you guys should be able to be seeing the results of this poll. Can you
I
see?
think most of you did that already, so you could easily, well, challenge us on purpose by giving a verb.
Yeah.
All of you. Thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, no, actually, I think Gabriella is the only one that knows that trick, I think. So we should have pretty clean results, actually. So
Right.
I'm going to take another screenshot here. And
All right, so as you can all see, 83% are nouns and we have 1 adjective. Okay. You can just remember the results. Now, can we get back to the slides? What should I do? Do I do something? I'm going to close
Stop
the
share
poll.
results, I guess. We have to click stop share results.
Or maybe I can close it.
yeah, you should just be able to close it.
Ah, I did it.
Stop sharing.
I close it. So, all right. Let me give you another task. Imagine to run. Well, imagining to run something is running, right? Imagine pink. Something is pink. Imagine beautiful. Something or someone is beautiful. Now, do you remember your results? It was 83% nouns. So these are the results because we asked that question at different events for the last year, I think. And this is a nice summary of the results. Usually 75% of the words given by people are objects, are different nouns. Some of them are abstract, but still nouns, and some of them are names. So this is another great example and proof that we humans think in objects and exist in places. Just let me check on the chat.
Oh, that's just me.
Who thought of a pink elephant? That's great. Okay. So, talking about existing in places, we humans, we have 3 basic needs applicable for any place. The need for orientation, the need for consistency, and the need for organization. And we are going to talk about these basic human needs throughout the talk today, starting from the need for orientation. So in any place, no matter whether it's physical, digital, or something else, we need to be able to recognize the objects inside, to know where are these objects, how many are there, what's the relations between these objects, what's your role there, what you can do there in that place with these objects. And let me give you a couple of examples, starting from the real world. This is a picture from a place inside. This is a really nice kitchen. It's not your kitchen, but you can easily and quickly recognize the different devices and utensils there. You know what you can do there. You know what the host can do there. For example, I'm not sure if you noticed the wine there, but this wine is about to be served, which is really good, especially for the lunch break. Another place, by the way, do you see the slides when I switch them? Or there is a delay at your end?
I don't think there's any delay. It looks good.
Okay, great. So this is a really nice place. Outside, this is a great view from our SAP office in Sofia. And my guess is you've never been there, but you can recognize the mountain, the buildings, the cars, the boulevard, the trees, the traffic lights, and so on. So this place is not that unfamiliar once you get to know it. Now, this is the place in Virtuality. It's a game. Even if you're not fond of playing these games, you can recognize that it's dealing with a space battle. There are spacecrafts fighting there, different kind of guns. There is a console operated by you as a player, and you want to defeat your enemy, most probably. A place in the imagination. This is a screenshot from the movie Avatar. First, you see the nature, the mountains, the trees, which is part of our real world, but then you notice the flying rocks, which can be frightening. It's definitely unfamiliar because we don't have these in the real world. This is a place on my computer. This is the Outlook application, and it's dealing with emails. And you can see what you can do with the objects there. You can send them, create them, delete them, archive them, reply, forward, and so on. Another place in the cloud this time, but again dealing with emails. And it's a different place, but it looks really similar to the place on my computer. Okay, how does a content place look like? The closest thing to my mind when we're talking about the content place is a book on paper. Actually, this is the book. Can you see it, by the way, on the camera? Can you see me? Not
yes,
sure.
I can see it. So it depends on what view people are in, whether they can see you or not. It's
so
different for everybody.
See the pictures I've taken. This is a rather thin book. But just noticing the title, you can guess that it's some sort of a handbook, a manual. Then if you look at the book itself, you can see the articles and how they look like. There are different colors there. Maybe there are some tips, some procedures you can read and start using. There are lots and lots of examples. You can see the table of contents. It's not that big, which is another proof that the book is thin. And there is an index. So there are different keywords. You can find these keywords in different articles and so on. So the book is an object, but at the same time is a content place containing other objects. And you can answer these questions, right? You know what the objects are, you know what's your role and what you can do with the book. Another content place, this time on the internet, this is SAP Help Portal. And just by looking at the homepage, you see the search field. You can search by keyword. You can find the SAP product hierarchy there, access learning journeys, most probably these are some sort of learning resources, get support if you need. And depending on whether you're an SAP employee and a customer, you can do different things. Customer can only log off actually and get to the homepage, while if you're an SAP employee, there are a lot more things you can do with the Help Portal. Another place dealing with content. This is the SAP Community introductory page, and again you have a search field here. You can search by keyword, but this time the focus is on how large the community is, how many community members and users are there, how many visits per day are there, and the questions answered, the blogs posted, and you can see you can even ask questions, receive answers to your specific questions, and write blog posts. Can you guess, just by looking at this screenshot, who are the members? Are these members, are these objects people or something else? Because there are only IDs there in the first column. And maybe by looking at the roles column, seeing the word administrator, the role administrator, you can guess that these might be people represented by IDs, but you can't actually be sure, right? And imagine this is your family bookshelf. This is how your bookshelf looks like. You have book IDs, author IDs. Can you tell just by looking at this information what the book is about? What do you think if the books were printed this way? Yeah, wrote in a database. Probably members, no. So imagine if this was the book. Here you can sort of rely on the picture on the cover that the book is telling a story about a war, but nothing more, right? There is just numbers for the title and I think number for, no, the authors.
Number for the authors, yeah.
Where is the number for the author? It's not
at
there.
The bottom, you see there are 2 authors. It's written by 2 people.
Okay, all right. I can't. I don't know why. And this is actually how the cover looks like, and it's much easier to know what the book is about, what this content place is about, and the objects there, and answering all the questions. Okay, so these were all examples of the first basic human need. Now Jimmy will tell you more about the second basic human need, the need for consistency.
Yeah. Well, the first was our ability to orient ourselves, and it depends on how the place is structured and how the content in that place is presented. The next one, the need for consistency, goes even deeper into the way we organize and present the objects in that place. So the need goes that wherever, don't switch this for me, please. Okay, thanks. Sorry. So that the need goes that wherever we go, at any place, we need and expect that the objects in that place maintain reliable properties, so that we can learn and recognize these objects and be able to manipulate them in different ways. And we break this need for consistency into 3 sub-needs. And these are the needs for recognizable appearance, that is, objects keep familiar look all the time. The next one is predictable behavior, which means that things that look alike and behave alike. That's once we learn that something that looks this way behaves this way, every time it should behave that way. And finally, the need for wholeness, which means that all properties and actions that are possible with an object, they should be there where you see the object, and they should be constantly available. And we will give some examples to illustrate all these 3 sub-needs. Okay, let's go for the recognizable appearance first. What I'm showing here are 2 screenshots from, from services in Sap Cloud Platform. And although they might look similar, they at the same time look different. So they're both services, and then why are they different? Like the layout is different, even the labeling is different. And on the left we have service description, and on the right we have description. These might be small changes, but they're like small speed bumps for a person who's trying to use the software. So that's one of the things, that these are not visually consistent. Another example, so these are 2 product pages, again an SAP example from the documentation. We already saw the homepage of the documentation portal, and these are 2 like sub home pages for different products. And I think this is much better than the previous example. They look very much the same. They have the same structure here and here. Do you see my mouse as I move it? Yeah, okay, good. The content might differ, but that's to be expected. Of course, you can see that the search box is maintained. Of course, there are differences. We don't have a description here. Well, we here have description, but these differences are not that significant to make it harder for users. Another example from Google, and again, documentation. 2 different products, very similar structure, so it's very recognizable. Aha, I'm looking at the homepage of a product. Same thing in Microsoft. You have 2 different products, Microsoft Teams and Azure, organized the same way, following the same structure. Good work. Now, we can go even further down into the topic. Topic, I don't know how many of you are coming from the documentation world, but the topic is like an article, a page explaining something. Although these 2 examples come from 2 different documentations. On the left, we have an SAP example. On the right, we have a Google example, but we can still recognize them as documentation topic. We can see numbered procedures here and here. Okay, this is something to be executed in a sequence. We have titles and subtitles. The formatting might differ, but these are very recognizable things. Another example is the button, and I'm sure you have seen many more examples of buttons, but believe me, these are all buttons coming from a single product. And actually, are these all buttons? You can't really say, because well, confirm here is a button, and leave is a button, and enter is a button, and create is a button, and is enabled a button, and not enabled in the button. They definitely look like buttons, but are they clickable? In fact, they're not, because this enabled is actually something called pill. That's just a way to show status, but why should it look like a button? I don't know. So the consistency kind of breaks here, makes it hard. Here I have another example, and this is actually video. This is a screenshot from a real form, and pay attention to these 2 drop boxes, right? These are drop boxes, and you're trying to fill out the form. You click, and then you click, and you click, and nothing happens. You have to click there to expand the drop down, the list. Why? Visually, these 2 are the same, but behaviorally, can I say that? They are not. Another example. This is a survey you have to fill out, and they have 2 questions, and they look the same, right? So you start filling out the survey. In the first question, you click. Sorry for the noise, and you click, and you click. And the second one, you click, and this one behaves differently. Why? Well, the first one is obviously a single select, and the second one is a multi-select. But nothing in the way these 2 look suggests the difference, and that's very confusing. Okay, I hope you got the picture. Now, the next sub-need in this category is predictable behavior, and we already saw the previous 2 examples actually illustrate this principle as well. We should be able to predict how an object will behave based on the way it looks and based on our previous experience. So here's an example from the SAP Cloud Platform product page. We want to focus on the area at the bottom where you see these 3 tiles. They have titles, they have small descriptions, and they have some actions at the bottom. So you click the first one, and what happens is you get a new window or tab, depending on the setting of your browser, into another SAP subsite. So you get it. A new window opens. Now you click the next one, So what do you expect? A new window should open with a new subsite. No, you get a pop-up. And what do you have in the pop-up? You can't guess it, but it's a PDF file. And now you get the third one. What's going to happen? Do you have any expectations? I'm sure you don't. You just don't care already. But, well, the behavior is different. You get the same window. You don't get another window. You don't get a pop-up. You just get the page change within the same window. So we have 3 tiles, 3 different behaviors. And this is not stable behavior in any way. And that's a very simple, basic example. It's just simple links. And you can have many more complicated things. I compare this behavior to the following. Imagine that you're walking down the corridor and you have 2 doors. They are, well, very similar, yet a little bit different. And even through this one, you can see through the window like that. Yeah, there's a clock inside, and there's some furniture. And you open the first door, and you enter the room the way exactly as you expected. You open the next door, and you go someplace else, like you're in a movie, science fiction movie. Something completely different happens. This is the same with the links. Okay, the third sub need is the need for wholeness. That means that we expect, and if this doesn't happen, we are very confused, that all actions with an object will be available wherever the object is. And all properties of that object will be visible there or exposed there when we see the object. Here's just one example, and I think you'll love it. And this is something that happened to me for real. My wife one day said, I want to delete this and I can't. And this is her phone, and I was like, why can't you delete it? Just go ahead, delete it. Don't bother me with the stupid things. And she was like, you delete it. And she gave me the phone, and I was like, and I'm looking at this page, and I was like, how do I delete this thing? So I tried clicking these buttons. No, I tried this. It just changed the view. And I was like, no, I can't delete this. I tried holding so that the menu appears. No, nothing. And this is the files application. So I don't remember how exactly, but I got this menu, it's the files application, and I started switching views until I got to the downloads view, where you can see we have a nice delete button. You don't want to design this way. I can understand why they made it this way, because in the recent, you don't have the real object, you have representations of the object, and they maybe thought if you delete the recent, you might delete it from the recent list, but not the object. But that's too much, I don't know, development or design thinking. That's not good design. Here's another example in content. These are 2 examples of release notes from 2 different products at SAP. On the left, we have, well, text. So this is an object. Imagine that this is the object of SAP Conversational AI Enterprise Edition. So you want to read more about it. What do you do here? Nothing. You just have to go somewhere and search and do something. On the right, you read about the Cloud Cockpit Managed User Authorizations for directories. You want to read more. What do? You have the link and you go read more. That's it. The actions that are possible are there, even in content. So yes, we can tolerate a lot of variance there. We are humans, we are very flexible, but less change, more stability means less strain for us and for users. Okay, so we get to our third need, and that's third basic need, and that's the need for organization. And this need is a little bit of a latecomer. It comes as we start to gain experience and skills within a domain, in a place. I don't think it's there in the very beginning. But as we mature, working or existing in that place or manipulating that place, we start to see opportunities to make it more comfortable for us, and we start to need to be able to arrange it in a way that makes sense to the way we work. And we have 4 like Sap categories here, we need to be able to name the things in that space and the spaces and the subspaces themselves. We also need to be able to group different objects by different traits, or whatever things make sense to us. We also need to be able to create relations between objects. And finally, we need to be able to move objects around and put them to places where it makes sense to us. And let's try to illustrate this. Jira, I hope you're familiar with Jira. And this is, in my opinion, a perfect illustration for the need for organization. It satisfies it to like, I don't know, 100%. Here's why. In Jira, you can build dashboards. You can share these dashboards. You can use them for personal use, or as I said, you can share with colleagues. You can search by anything and for anything, but that's not all. You can save these searches, name these searches, and then reuse them later. So that's a way to organize things. You can also control the way the issues, in this case, because we use Jira for issue management. You can control how the view appears, what columns are shown, how the columns are ordered. You can also add labels to the pieces of content there, to the issues, which labels are actually ways to organize things and to group things. You can also create links about or relations among different issues, which allows you to very quickly navigate among issues. And you can also name anything. That's a big thing. And yes, you can move issues among projects from this list to that list and so on. And we have another example, this time for documentation, but I'll give it to Katya because she loves this.
This is my favorite example, and by the way, I'm contributing there, so this is really personal now. This is the SAP Cloud Platform Discovery Center, and as you can see from the front page, it contains services, but it also contains missions. And what are these missions? Well, these are use cases described in different phases and different single steps so that users can implement them easily. And by accessing the list of all missions, you can control, okay, can I?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. So this is different missions represented by tiles. You choose your missions, and the moment you start a mission, now it's your own. You create your own instance of that mission, and you can change lots of things that that are visible only to you and your team. So when you start a mission, you can change its title, you can change the description, say exactly how you're going to implement that according to your specific use case. And you can also go to the project board, which looks really similar what Trello does. You have different columns here. These are the phases of the mission. And the different steps are represented by cards. And by opening a single card, you can see the text there. All the content is inside the card, and all the cards are ordered one after the other. You can put lots of resources there, videos, links, more information, other types of documentation there. You can do a lot of things to a single card, to a single step. You can assign it to your colleague, adding members. You can share the card, you can copy the card, move it, label it, mark it as completed, or just ignore that because it's not applicable to what you're doing, delete the card, or put a due date to it. You're really, really empowered to personalize everything here. For example, here in this card, Jimmy has put a due date on.
Oh, it's a new card.
Yes, this is a new card. Jimmy is creating a new step because it's not originally part of the mission. And here, just look at how originally the mission looks like and the different phases and steps, because now I'm going to show you how Jimmy personalized it. So the first step now has a due date. The second card is ignored. You can see here a little sign because it's not applicable to our use case. The third one, Jimmy is assigned as a person responsible for completing the task. Then you have another column, another face that is visible only to us as users, as owners of this instance of the mission. This new phase now contains as a first step the originally fourth step of the first phase, and it contains different labels, more labels actually. You have another created step there, and it's pinned and it has the due date. So you are really empowered to organize this place the way you need it and the way you love it. And no one else is seeing it unless you add them, well, your team, most probably. So the things we'd like you to take home are these basic human needs in any place. The need for orientation, you need to know the objects, their relations, what you can do with these objects, and what you can do in that place. The need for consistency, you need to rely on the object's properties so you can learn them, recognize them, interact with them. You need a stable and consistent appearance, behavior, in wholeness of these objects. And last but not least, the need for organization. Once you are sort of familiar with the place, you need to be able to arrange it according to your personal needs, to name things, to group them, to move them, and to relate them. Because we as creators, as content creators, we can't anticipate and fulfill every customer's need. So getting back to or imagining the mission I just showed you, the very same thing can be represented in an old-fashioned PDF, but there you can't do anything to personalize it. You can just read it and take notes. All right, and here it comes Jimmy's favorite part, the quantum stuff and the bonus, and actually the topic we are talking about today.
Yeah, I hope, guys, you can relate especially the first two needs, the needs for orientation and the needs for consistency, to the whole OOUX topic and the way we dive into especially the analysis of objects and their attributes and their relations. And that's why I think when you design and keep these three needs of your users in mind, your designs come up much better. And the bonus, and that's actually related exactly to the title of this topic, and I think I really love it, is it goes like this. In the world, or at least there are two ways that I know of to group things. You can either group them by place or by property or an attribute. If there is another way, let me know. I would love to learn. But since we have these two places, in the physical world, if you have an object, let's say that you have this little red flower here in the physical world, you can place it in a single place. You can just put it somewhere. So if you want to group it with the red things, you have to put it in the red things group. If you want to put it with the plants, you have to put it in a different group. You can't have it at the two places at the same time. But our human mind, it allows to put an object at as many places as you want. It's very easy to have it with the reds or with the plants or whatever. And to the digital world, can we have the same object at several places at the same time? Absolutely no problem, because what we see on the screen is actually a representation. So it's very easy. That's why we can speak of object superposition, because the same object can be at several places at the same time. And I'm sure you can think of examples right away, but I'm going to share a couple of them related to content and documentation. So is there a problem to have the same entry in a table of contents? Absolutely not. So this is an example from the table of contents, and it's broken in two because the whole table of contents is like half a kilometer long because it's a huge product. But you see that the same item, the same topic appears in 2 different places. Perfect. It's there where people need it. We can have content at a lower level, like a paragraph can appear at different places. Absolutely the same paragraph. You see this description, it appears in the documentation. Here's the same table of contents we were looking at the previous example. But the same text appears in the Discovery Center, which we looked recently. The same text can appear in a chatbot. And again, we have a single object that appears in 3 different places at the same time. We can go even deeper, and I'm sure you're familiar with variables. And here, what we show is actually, this one is kind of ugly, but this is the way where you define the variable in the content authoring system. You define a name for your product, and you say, well, this variable means name product, and the name of the product is like this at this point. And if you need to change the name of the product in the 1.5 million places where it's shown, when you have it defined as a variable, the change happens in a second. And believe us, we've changed the name of our product several times in the last few years. If we haven't used a variable, then maybe we would have been changing the name of the product still, editing the document. So that's another illustration of how content can be at many places at the same time. Labels, we already mentioned labels, but yes, this is an example from Gmail where they use labels very well. And you can see that the same email from Ekaterina, so it's an exchange between Ekaterina, Sofia, and me, can appear in my inbox, but it can also appear in my UX Sofia place, and it can also appear in the OOUX place. And that's done only with the use of labels. So that's a label is actually a place. And yes, we are going to be talking about this more at UX Sofia, but join UX Sofia not to hear us because you already know what we are talking, but there will be interesting content, and it will be in the middle of November, 17th, 20th. It will be online, and I think we will find some way to, well, incentivize you. Probably you'll get a discount from the organizer or something. So you're invited to join us at UX Sofia. And I guess that's from us, and we're ready for comments and questions.
Awesome. I put the link to UX Sofia in the chat, but if you guys do have a discount code, I would be happy to send that out to everybody. It's a great conference and great organizers, and I think that they're going to do a great job of putting it online. So thanks, guys. That was super interesting. I have a ton of questions that I would love to chat with you guys about, but first, I just want to open up to anybody else. You guys, and feel free to just pop off mute and ask your question if you have anything, or just a comment. So I'm going to go ahead and I will. So as you, oh, there's some echoing there. Okay, so I'm going to, as you guys are thinking of what your question might be, I'm going to go ahead and ask one of mine. So I loved how you guys were using SAP as an example, and so many of your, as you were kind of picking on some of these topics, you were actually using your own company. Have you presented this at SAP before?
Jimmy has.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how did that go? How does, I guess my question is, how did it go when you were presenting this to SAP? And how do you think these at your organization, how does some of these inconsistencies come into play? How does it happen? What are the things, like if you guys were king and queen at SAP, what would you change to potentially prevent some of these things from happening at like the high organizational level or process level? What would you make different at your company?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. Of course, the easy answer is we will change SAP to pay more attention to design, the way things are designed, to pay. Well, SAP is a like a big real company. So I think that the things that move SAP are beyond my understanding, because I'm not an executive. I'm a designer. I'm a practitioner, usability practitioner. And of course, I would love to see more attention to usability and to user experience. But
I would
yes,
ask all responsibles, starting from the highest levels, to go to Sophia's training about OUX.
Great answer. Thank you. Do you think that there's any issues with silos? So this team not knowing what this team is doing, like, do you have a lot of that where teams aren't necessarily communicating and sometimes the same thing gets created twice in two different ways? Like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing?
We are 100,000 people there in how many countries, Jimmy?
I don't know, more than 100. So I don't. It's a
Okay,
huge company. You definitely have this, and
Yes.
that's, I think it's good to have, because this way you have opportunities for new things to show up. You can see if two teams are working on the same thing from different perspectives, they might come up with different solutions, different ideas. But
And they're
I think
all striving to be better, which is sometimes a good thing. Not necessarily always, but sometimes.
That's a really positive way to look at it, to think like, okay, well, maybe we do have silos, but those people can kind of be, even if you are working on the same thing, you might come up with some somewhat different solutions. But is there a point in the process where we need to say, okay, you guys were doing X and you guys were doing X and you have two different solutions, but let's get together and figure out what is the best of both worlds? How do we merge these together into an experience that's more consistent?
And SAP is actually working very hardly in this direction, because SAP has acquired many companies in the last, many, I'm not sure how many, in the last few years. And each company comes with their own, UI design, way of working, way of presenting. And we are very slowly unifying, making things more consistent for or across the entire suite of several hundred or several thousand applications that SAP has. So it's very difficult. If you look from inside, you can, of course, you always see that many small things or even bigger things that are not okay. But if you actually look from above, you actually see that SAP is putting the puzzle slowly and becoming better and better in terms of user experience. And I think we are on the right track here. Yes, we have silos. We always have, they're doing this, we didn't know, but that's part of the big corporate culture anyway, so that's normal.
That's true, right? So does anybody else have any questions for Jimmy and Ekaterina?
Sophia, are you still getting an echo from me?
No, I'm not getting it.
Okay, I apologize for that earlier. I think it's because I was airplaying you from my tablet to my television. I was leaning back and enjoying a meal, so it's ties back to the previous conversation. So
no worries.
I'd like to zoom out just a little bit for context. And I really enjoyed the presentation. I love the places that you took us around these three basic needs: orientation, consistency, and organization. I'm curious where, I guess, in what domain you came up with these three basic needs. Are they sociological? Are they developmental? I mean, it reminds me of object permanence, the developmental stage that human infants and toddlers go through as they begin to navigate the world. So I'd love to hear where it came from, and what additional ramifications might extend from that could be analogous to content and to UX.
Okay, thank you for the question, and we should really answer it, but I'm not able to answer it now. It's like something that has been growing and developing in our minds for over the years. It definitely touches upon the object-oriented UX. I think Sophia has an article on orientation as a need.
Yeah, a lot of these are,
Yes.
So a lot of these are definitely aligning to human cognition and perception. So Daniel's going to be in cohort 3, so we'll definitely be talking about Jean Piaget and his the developmental stages of going through object permanence. So and learning basically, I mean, this idea that objects are separate from me, which I've always found so fascinating, how that's one of the first things that newly minted humans need to learn, is that there are objects in the world, that it's not just a big womb. Like you're in a womb for 9 months, you come out and you're like, oh, this is just a bigger, more complicated womb. Like, this is all still me. And that we actually, the theory at least goes, is that there is a step that the child has to go through to understand that there are objects that are separate, specifically that mom is separate from me, and that when mom goes out of the room, that mom has not completely disappeared from the face of the planet. So that separation anxiety and that object permanence kind of is really tied up with each other. And then for as far as orientation, that's a lot of human perception, just how we use our visual cortex, the what and the where pathways of the brain, which are just these big old parts of the brain that have just been around for a really, really long time, way before our prefrontal cortex. So often when we're confused, or we're just trying to we're basically using that kind of intuitive, what I call kind of like the lizard brain understanding of something, we're just recognizing objects. That's what we're doing. We're figuring out, what are the objects, where are the objects, how are they relating to each other, and how can I actually manipulate these objects? So that just goes back to a lot of human perception. So I do have quite a few articles on Medium about that, if you want to dive in farther. But yeah, it's super interesting stuff when you think about how our brain works and how our brain has evolved in this physical world. And just in the last 10 years, 20 years, now we're spending so much time in a digital world that is not beholden to the laws of physics. So things can get really confusing if designers aren't thinking okay, what laws of physics do I want to break? Having two things in the same place at one time breaks the laws of physics, but in a way that can make us superheroes. We just need to make sure that we realize hey, we're breaking the laws of physics here. So let's make sure that we're giving everybody a lot of really good understanding on how that works. But then other laws of physics, when you break them, it's not empowering anybody. It's just confusing them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's fantastic. Not only in making design determinations for a product or a documentation set that you're building, but also for justifying those decisions to internal stakeholders or to end users. You can make these analogies with Piaget and say, this is how you've learned for thousands of years before recorded time around navigating the physical universe. We're just taking that into the digital space to help accelerate sense making and accomplishment of tasks. So this is really enjoyable. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Daniel.
As Sophia was talking, I actually kind of remembered how when I came first with this 3 needs. I was doing a review back in 2016 or 17 of our product, and I tried to make it somehow to explain it to my colleagues how things should be and how we should actually order the product and why we should order the product. And that's when I first came up with these 3 needs and illustrated how we should be organizing the things. We still have not organized them the way I have proposed, but we are moving in the right direction. Things take time.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. But yes, I'm a practitioner. Of course, my knowledge is coming from all different sources. I can't always recall the sources. So sorry for this.
I have just a comment that I want to make sure to touch on, which is this idea of organization and how there's a human need to be able to organize those things, and that there's a personalization that's happening there. So as far as we talk a lot about CTAs and what can users do to these objects, and I feel like I want to encourage people more with, like, after you define the objects in your system and you figured out all the relationships between those objects, to think about, okay, when somebody is doing things to these objects, how can they organize these objects for themselves? So moving and grouping. So being able to create groups and being able to move amongst those groups, and even being able to have something in multiple groups. So tagging, grouping, and moving things from group to group, or even changing the order of things. I know that that's like a big frustration for me when I get to a certain application and I can't move things around. Like I'll try to drag something, I'll try to reorder something. I'm like, why can't I reorder this? So that's just something that I'm going to be thinking about more, is those specific CTAs. So actually going through a process of like, does it make sense if I have 5 objects in the system? Does it make sense for the user to be able to create groups of these objects? Does it make sense for the user to be able to move these objects from group to group? And then if they do want to have an instance of an object in 2 different groups, how do I allow them to do that? How do I allow them to kind of like have that quantum ability of having 2 things in the same place, and make it clear on how that works? Because that's a huge, because we are breaking the laws of physics there, to say, okay, we're going to put these 2 things in the same place, or two different places at the same time. How do we make clear, like if I edit it in one place, does it edit in the other place? That kind of thing. How do we make clear how that actually is working? If I delete it in one place, does it delete it in the other place? Or am I just deleting it from this group? So I just wanted to make sure to thank you guys for that, because it's a thing that I'll definitely be thinking of in the future. Anybody else have a question or a comment? I have another question. I'll wrap it up.
This last one was not a question, really, right?
No, it's still not really.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
just an observation that, like, oh, that's something that, like, because I've never really recognized that. Like, I have that need, and I'm always mad when I'm not given that option. If I want to group things and I can't do it, or I want to rearrange things and I can't do it, that's something that that pisses me off about software sometimes. So that's something to be, as I'm thinking about CTAs, to make sure to remember that human need for organization. So my question for you is about anybody that has any SEO experience, feel free to jump in on this, but is there any SEO ramifications with having the 2 things in the same place at the same time? Like, do we ever need to watch out for that? Does Google ding us for that? Or is it that is there a right way to do it technically so that we don't have repeated content that hurts us from an SEO perspective?
I have no idea. Honestly. SEO, it's like, it's like black magic to me. I don't really believe in SEO in the sense that everybody's doing and working on it. I just believe in good content. As long as you have good content, people will be able to find it. So that's it. And if this content happens to be in several places, it's up to Google to show me that it's in different places. But yeah, there are certain complications when you're searching for, but I guess Google can recognize if it's within the same domain. I guess it will have probably the same address, because the physical address, the physical location, and the way we present it in the content, these are 2 different things. The thing can still maintain its single physical address, and then there is really no difference where it's being shown. Of course, then there is a problem in which context. If you're searching for a thing, an article that appears in 2 or 3 different contexts in our documentation, and how does Google or the search engine know in which context to show this article? But then we are now getting into object-oriented design, and so when you are in this article, what else you should be able to go to, and then from this article you should have links to the 3 contexts in which this article makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is that the content really should have that one URL, should be housed in that one place. You don't want to be copying and pasting a bunch of content across your site. You want it to be housed in one place in the CMS, but pointed to. So you can chunk it and sort of reference it from multiple different contexts. So I can reference that content in a chat bot. I can reference that content in, in context where I am in the interface. I can also reference it in the help section, but within, as far as a URL is concerned, it's really only living in one place. We're just pointing to it from multiple places.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback on that, a couple of things that occurred to me is in the public domain where Google comes in, if you were to search for a term, if you've got the appropriate semantic markup, that term will appear in the search results. And if it's in your domain, it will have one result for that one location. But you'll also get the info box over on the right-hand side that breaks it down semantically. So if you're just looking for a cocktail recipe or the capital of Bulgaria, you'll get that answer in a zero-click, scenario. The example you used in your presentation today was not necessarily two representations of content, but two locations for it in a documentation table of contents.
Yep.
Right. So I mean, I don't think you're necessarily dealing with an SEO situation as much as you're providing a user affordance. If someone was to search the documentation, they would just get that one location, within context. They would not go to the table of contents and see those. I guess you could in the Microsoft Word doc.
Actually, they will, because the table of contents usually synchronizes with the page on which you are currently located.
Right. And then finally, I guess what occurred to me that might be related and might not, but just to kind of riff on it is, I went straight to Wikipedia and the use of disambiguation pages. So if somebody gets a search for something that might be similar or might just be a homonym, you can have that disambiguation page that has all the markup required to get good SEO, that then somebody could then read through and be a click away from the exact piece of information they're looking for.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, those disambiguate, those are very useful often. I land on those pages a lot. Okay, so I want just one more topic, and then I know we're going over time a little bit, but one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is permissions, and how, especially like we've hit it with Zoom a lot. I was recently using Mural in these past 2 workshops that I ran, and permissions were just such a problem because it was so hard to tell, like, as the guest, what you're like, or you kind of know, like, what are my rights here, because I can't see that button and I can see that button, but it's really hard to tell, especially if you're like an administrator perspective, or you're the creator of something. Like, what do other people's permissions have? So when you were showing the kind of like the Trello lookalike, and you said, okay, like, I can only see this column, but is this something that you guys run into a lot? Like, we ran into it with the poll, actually, where as the person that launched the poll, we were all like, who can vote on this? Like, I was like, I don't see where I can vote. Maybe I just can't see it. And I had no idea what other people were seeing. I didn't know if they were seeing the results coming in. I didn't know if you guys, Jimmy and Ekaterina, if you could see it because you were co-hosts. Like, can the co-host vote? Is it only the host that can't vote? I had no idea what your experience was. And I guess I just kind of open this up to everybody. If any of you guys are dealing with this in your work, where it's like, I have a system where there's different levels of permissions, and how can I be clear on what other permissions can do?
I think the cleanest way would be to have all the options and just to gray out things that you are not allowed to touch or to work with. Because, this is not the only example. I think another tool, GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, it has massive issues like this. I never know what people are seeing and what I can do. And sometimes I know I should be able to do something, but I can't see it, I can't do it. And many, many more examples. So I think that the creators are proud of doing it this way because they think that by providing different roles and authorizations, users will be more empowered. But what I experience as a user is just by getting frustrated. I would get less frustrated to see all the options and the ones I can't touch, instead of not knowing who sees what all the time.
100%. I would so much rather just in that poll version, like I should have been able to see exactly what you guys were seeing, but it could be like grayed out and have a message like hosts are not allowed to vote on their own polls. And I'd be like, okay, that makes sense, I guess. Hosts are not allowed to vote on their own polls, but that messaging wasn't there. So I was just in the dark asking you guys, like, can you see it? Can you not see it? And even for you guys to be able to maybe even see like where the results are going to come in, but it would say like results will be shared once, or, you know, once the host is sharing, they're going to share the results. So communicating those things, like what is the other person seeing? This was a huge problem for the ed tech client of mine that I talk about all the time, ClassWorks, for the teacher and the student, because the teacher and the student had such different experiences, and the teacher had no idea what the student was seeing. So the teacher had their kind of manager experience, and they were always having to kind of like look over like, oh, wait, you can't see that. Like I can see that, but you can't see that. So that we did something very similar with ClassWorks, where the teacher was able to kind of switch views and easily like see student view is another way to do it. So you can either have a lot of stuff grayed out, or the ability to like see, like it's on some profiles. Like you could be like, let me see how a visitor would see this. I think on YouTube you can see like, here's what I'm seeing as far as my channel, but like view as a follower or something like that. So you can kind of toggle between those views is another way to handle it.
Sometimes there are legal restrictions. If you're developing a software product, for example, and in some countries, for some reason, you can have only part of that product. Well, seeing the content and the documentation for the entire product, now it's a problem, because the customers would ask, okay, why I don't have access to this part of the product? So in these cases, we deliberately separate documentations, the software views, and so on, because of these issues, because of what the customer might feel like they're getting, well, a restricted version of the product, they will definitely feel like, well, not well at all.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I guess the takeaway there is, as you're thinking about the experiences, these different experiences, how helpful is it to kind of show what the other, like how much does the user need to know what other users can experience, and what can you show, and how can you communicate that in a way that sort of works within the constraints that you're in, is from a legal perspective or even a marketing perspective. That from a marketing perspective, that they do that often, where like a feature shows up, but like if you haven't paid for it, it still might show up, and then you can click on it. It'll be like, do you want to upgrade to the professional version, and you can use this feature. So from a marketing perspective, we do it all the time. But I think that we need to be thinking more about like from a functionality perspective, and things like, I mean, just with Mural, it was like I had no idea what my participants were seeing. I had to, create a test account, go into incognito mode in a test account to like basically understand what the other user is experiencing it. And a lot of users, I guess, wouldn't sort of, I mean, I know to do that, but a lot of users wouldn't know to do that.
Yeah, talk to Jim Kalbach and maybe he can take some
So
care.
one application from my experience that I think handled it really elegantly, and it's been a while since I've used SAP. The product has certainly come a long way. But Salesforce is an application I've got a little more experience with, and admins can access, depending upon their breadth of administrative oversight, they can, via a drop-down, select another user, and their screen will immediately reflect what that user sees. So, I used to talk to my admin all the time and say, hey, I can't see this, or I can't perform this function. And, on her screen, she was 2 floors up in the building. She would just click my name from the drop-down, see exactly what I'm seeing, and say, okay, walk me through something. If it was just user error, or say, no, you don't have that capability. Here's a possible work. And I think that kind of execution would work well in something like a mural.
Yeah, that's login on behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this is a theme for another presentation. Actually, it's a whole topic.
I know, it definitely is. I've thought a lot about how OOUX can help with permissions. So cool. Does anybody, before we wrap up here, I just want to open up the floor one more time. Does anybody have any other questions for Jimmy and Katarina? All right. Well, in that case, thank you guys so much for the presentation.